What's up? If you don't know me, my name is C.T.Jamison, and I live in Newark, Delaware. Now, if you see my videos before, generally I would start this off by pointing out something that's happening in Delaware politically or socially and say, hey, Delaware, we need to have a talk. Today's going to be a little bit different. Because if you've also seen my videos, you know that there's actually been a pretty good space between when I started and right now, whenever I post this one, hopefully pretty soon. Um, and I wanted to talk about that space and what happened. But I didn't want to just say, like, hey, life happened, I'm back, let's start going and diving into current events. I actually wanted to talk about what happened and how it pertains or how it relates to what is also happening in our country, in our world. So this one's for everyone, it's not just for Delaware. Now, the reason why I wanted to do that is because this year is a very special year. It is the midterms, which, in my opinion, is as much, if not more, important than the general elections because your representatives in Congress are the people that actually make laws, and they probably have a larger impact on your day to day life than the president does. But the turnout for these things is very low. And I think that I personally think it should be our civic duty to vote, but I think that we should also be looking at what are we voting for? What is important to us as a society? My view on elected officials is that their job is to try to make our lives better. If not better, then at least keep it status quo, but I would like it to be better because at this point in time, there's a lot of things in our society I think we can all agree could be better. So I'm going to share what happened and how I think that relates. Before I get into the story that I'm going to share today, um, I want to point out a couple things, just so we're clear. The subject that I'm gonna talk about is not something that this isn't a come to God moment for me. This isn't like, hey, something happened to me, now I think this is important. This was important beforehand. This was important last year and the year before. It's been important. It's been important my entire life. It's been important. It's been very important for your entire life. Um, but I do now have a more current way to relate to this subject. And my hope is that if I share, then it will help some other people to be able to relate to the subject as well. Um, Now, I've been thinking a little bit about how I was going to do this and how I was going to frame it, mostly because I'm going to get a little bit more personal than I ever really planned to get on social media and on the internet um, today. And like, I didn't grow up with social media. This is a thing that happened halfway through my life, like many other people. And I never really thought I was going to like open up and be like, hey, this is me vulnerable on the internet. So it's a little bit uncomfortable. And the last thing I'd like to point out is that I would like to make it known that I realize, and I will point this out during this story, that I realize that I'm very fortunate at every step of this story, at every step of the way of what's happened over the past couple months. I'm very fortunate. But my problem isn't that I'm fortunate and it's still hard. My problem is that other people are less fortunate. And I don't think that's okay. And I don't think as a society we should accept this situation. So, if you made it this far, this one's not going to be my shortest video. But let's get into the story. Let's find out what happened. So, if you know me, I'm sure at least one or two people that I actually know will watch this. Maybe they can contest to this. One of my favorite things, one of my favorite activities, one of my largest social drivers in my personal life for years has been disc golf. So if you've never seen disc golf, if you've ever been to a state park and you see these weird looking baskets and these hippies throwing frisbees at trees, Yeah, I'm one of those weird hippies that throws frisbees in the woods at the weird baskets. I found disc golf about 10 years ago on a camping trip. And I'll be honest, I grew up here in Delaware and I never really felt that I had a great community in Delaware. I never felt a strong tie to a lot of things. And I moved around a little bit and I ended up settling here again. And then I found disc golf and I was like, this community means a lot to me. And it's something that I really fell into I'm very grateful for. And one of the things that is unique to disc golf that I think disc golf really gets right, one of the amazing things about disc golf is glow. Um, and again, if you're unfamiliar, glow is something that we do generally in the winter time. It's where we play disc golf at night, and we have glowing discs and blacklight torches, blacklight flashlights, and we have lights on the baskets. And where I play glow is Friday nights at a place in rural Maryland. It's not too far from Delaware. It's a private property. We have lights on the trees. I'm going to put up a picture of this so you get a good idea of what it looks like. To me, it is Christmas at night, disc golf. It's a very happy thing. I look forward to it every year, all year. It comes around when the days are short and it gets dark early. And I look forward to it because, in part, because I gave up drinking in bars and partying years ago. And this to me, considering like our most reliable glow is Fridays, it's just something to look forward to kick off my weekend that I don't have to worry about, being at a bar or any of those kind of things. I've given that all up, but it's a nice like kind of nightlife weekend type of thing that I love it. So of course we're having it this year, and I was going every Friday that I could, and having a blast. And on January 16th, I was out playing disc golf, playing glow. We play random doubles. So I'm with my partner, and we're playing pretty well, and we're about halfway through the round. And I stepped up to what is hole one at that course, which was our ninth hole out of 18. I threw a big flex forehand around a tree way down the fairway on a par four. I saw it land and skip off to the right. I was really happy with the throw. It was a great throw, which was just an extension to we were having a really good night. I turned around to get off the tee pad, and when I turned around, the world just kept doing this, kept spinning. Now, I've had vertigo a couple times in my life, and it's not fun, but it's usually when I wake up, if I got like dehydrated or something, I wake up and I just like stay dizzy for the day. It's pretty terrible. I walked over to the bench off to the side of the tee pad, and the first thing I'm thinking to myself is, man, this is a really bad time for vertigo. I'm having a great night. And this sucks. So I sit down, and I could feel myself twisting to the left. So I'm holding onto the bench. And my buddies are there, and they're asking me questions. How are you? Do you need a minute? How do you feel? They're being great about it. At first, we're just like, give me a minute, maybe it'll go away. Within a minute or two, the left side of my face started to tingle. My left hand started to tingle. My left foot started to tingle. My mouth went numb. And I looked up at my buddies and I said, call 911. I'm having a stroke. Now, I'm only 40 years old, so like I'm pretty young for a stroke. And I think that I can file this in the realm of a freak accident. But it's a really scary freak accident. So they're on the phone with 911. Ambulance is about 12 minutes out. Right before the lady said not to, I tried to take a drink of my water to see if it would make me feel better. By that time, my throat was swollen up and I started choking on the water. For a minute there, I thought, man, I'm going to die on the side of the road choking on my own spit playing a hippie sport. It was pretty scary. But I was really fortunate in a couple things where this happened. For one, I was playing with my buddies. This course does not have very good cell service. Hole 1 has the only reliable cell service on the course. It's also right next to the main road and the property owner's driveway, which means that I wasn't deep into the woods on the other side of a cornfield, which means that me, who towers over both of the people I was playing with, didn't have to be dragged out by a couple of guys that were really going to struggle to get me out of there. We didn't have to worry about the ambulance getting back into the cornfield. I was very fortunate as to where it happened for those reasons. We were able to easily get the 911. They were able to easily get me out of there. So, of course, I spent a couple of days in the hospital. It was a minor stroke. Let me tell you, minor stroke doesn't mean it was easy to deal with. It's a pretty terrible situation I wouldn't wish on anybody. And I got great care, so I'm not here to talk about how bad the healthcare workers were, because they weren't. I got taken to one hospital, which is a small branch campus of our main hospital around here. I had to get transferred to the larger hospital because that's where they have neurology. That's not a big deal. It's only like 10 miles. My care was great. My nurses were great. I saw about 1,000 doctors. They were all great. No issues there. Spent a couple days in the hospital, and I came home to resume my life. But I started getting letters. And this is the thing. Now, before I get into the letters, you should know that I work for a nationwide company. I've been working there for 18 years. I have opted into the highest level of insurance that we offer, knowing that I go out and do things that could get me injured. And also because if you just pay a little bit more out of your paycheck, then your deductibles and stuff are a lot lower. And I've been doing that for years. Now, a couple years ago, they changed our insurance provider. Now, years and years ago, we would have options between multiple insurance providers. A couple years ago, they changed our insurance provider. Well, about 5 or 6 years ago, we stopped having an option. And then 2 years ago, they went from one provider to another. Now, I would have stayed with my own provider because I never really had any issues. I heard there were issues in other areas. This is a common theme throughout the healthcare industry, is that some healthcare providers start having a hard time paying out-of-network places. So we changed to UMR, and we changed right around the time United Healthcare was in the news for being United Healthcare. And we made the change in November, and then in December that ends up in the news, and we all start like up in arms about it. We're like, this is what's going to happen to our care. Well, now I have something to say about it. I started getting these letters, and the letters said two things. The first is it said these tests and whatever you were doing, the CT scans, the MRI scans, and all the blood tests, they're medically necessary. And in that first sentence, I thought, no shit. Thanks, genius, for telling me that I needed to have a CT scan after having a stroke. Great. I'm glad we're on the same page. The next sentence was the one that bothered me. The next sentence said, but where you're going is out of network. And this is an interesting thing, because if you live in Delaware, you know, especially in northern Delaware, in Newcastle County where I live, the main medical provider here is Christiana Care. I was in Northeast Maryland when this happened. They took me to Union Hospital. Union Hospital was a branch campus of Christiana Care, so of course they transferred me to Christiana Care, to the main hospital. That's the only place in northern Delaware you can get trauma care or the type of neurology care that I need. That's the only one. Now, what I do know, because I've been dealing with some other stuff through healthcare, is that Penn Medicine is in network. Now, I hope that you've never been in the back of an ambulance choking on your own spit like I was. That is not the time I'm going to look at the driver and say, hey man, I need you to drive past 3 hospitals and take me to Philadelphia. That's ridiculous. But what's also ridiculous is the only healthcare provider that I have an option of getting, I can get the higher care or the lower care, the only one that I can get makes almost everything in Newcastle County, in Delaware, almost everything in Delaware out of network. Now, before you think I'm asking for money, I'm not. Christianacare has a great payment plan. I'm not going to lose my house because of this. I'm not going to go bankrupt because of this. I got on a payment plan. I'm okay. But not everyone is that fortunate. And that is a problem. And that brings me to the subject for today, which is when we are looking at people to represent us, their job should be to make American life better. That is their job. We are hiring them to do that. At some point in time, I may be trying to ask for that job because I wouldn't mind spending the rest of my life trying to make American life better for me and for you. And one of the topics that we should all, I don't care where your politics are on this one, right, left, center, doesn't matter. We should all come together and say, our healthcare system is not working very well. A single payer healthcare system would work better. Now, like you, I've heard all of the arguments against a single payer healthcare system. And I'm going to go over a couple of them really quickly. The main ones that we hear are, it'll make my taxes go up. But here's the thing. I don't know how much you pay for your health insurance. I pay almost $400 a month by myself out of my paycheck for my health insurance. And of course, the company that I work for also pays a portion as well. Their portion is higher than mine. Now, if a single payer healthcare system cost me $400 a month, that's just taking money from this bucket and putting it into this bucket. That is the same. That's not a raise in taxes. You can call it taxes. You can say, hey, my taxes went up, but also my contribution to healthcare went down, right? It went from 400 to 0, and then my taxes went from 0 to 400. That's the same. Okay? And then you hear people say, hey, I might lose my doctor. But if we really think about this, if healthcare has one option, a single payer healthcare system, there is one. You can call it what you want. We can call it Medicare for all. We can call it something else. I really don't care. If there's only one option, then all doctors would take that healthcare because it's the only one, right? So there is a chance that this change would happen and you would lose your doctor. That chance you would see because your doctor retired. And I don't know about you, but I would like to one day retire. And I feel like if there's something I want for myself, I should want it for other people as well. So if my doctor, and I've been through this a couple of times, it's kind of a pain, but I've been through this 3 times so far. If my doctor gets to the point where he has enough money and the ability and he wants to retire and go enjoy his life, hey man, go do it. I want to do that someday too. Okay, so your doctor might retire. But you wouldn't lose your doctor because they stopped taking the insurance because there's only one insurance option with a single payer healthcare system, right? We also have the old, it'll be more expensive. My vision, my personal vision, if I was in government pushing for a single payer healthcare system, my vision would be that it would be not for profit, single payer healthcare system. And that should actually lower the cost by itself because right now we have our healthcare administrators like United Healthcare. They make millions and millions of dollars in profit, and we have to pay millions and millions of dollars to them for them to take that profit. They have a fiduciary obligation to make profit. If you take profit out of the situation, then the cost of it is less because you don't have to turn a profit. That doesn't mean that nurses and doctors would make a good amount of money. They would and they should because we need them and they're highly trained professionals. But it means that shareholder profits are not part of the pie. And then there was one more that I wanted to go over. Maybe we'll get back to it. But either way, That's the way that I would look at it, is say it's single payer and it's not for profit. Then I wouldn't get these letters saying, hey, you have to pay extra because we decided that the healthcare administrator that we give to you also doesn't work in your state. Um, so again, I will be okay, but it's something to think about and to say that we shouldn't have to worry about that. You shouldn't have to worry about like, hey, if I need emergency care, I need to go to a specific hospital. I need emergency care. And I've been in that situation a couple of times. I had appendicitis a couple years ago, had to get emergency care. Um, Obviously, there was the stroke. If you're wondering what happened, I tore the artery in the back of my neck. It's going to take a while to heal. Kind of sucks. Like, really sucks. So, that's all bad enough. That's all something to think about. That is all bad enough. Before I went into the hospital, there was another thing going on that I was actually kind of worried about while I was in the hospital. For the people that know me, they also know that I have a passion for dogs, pit bulls in general. Complete devotion to the breed of pit bulls. I tell people that they're my spirit animal. I've had 3. The third one, for the past 5 or so years, I was fostering through a local no-kill shelter. I got her during COVID. I was feeling like there was some depression coming on, and it was the first time in my life that my house was empty. And I don't know if you've ever lived by yourself, and you start feeling depression. And we were during lockdown. I know a lot of people went through depression during lockdown. We were during lockdown. I just needed something to fill the space because, like, you could feel like the walls closing in, you know. So I went to the shelter, and I had adopted through the shelter before, and I was like, look, I don't have time for a puppy. I really don't have the money for a dog right now, but there are a subsect of dogs that are just never going to get adopted. And in this case, it's older pit bulls, also dogs with terminal diseases. And they had 2. They had 2 older female pit bulls with cancer. So I went and met both of them, and one of them really just like, as soon as I met her, I took her outside for a few, and I was like, this dog has more life than you guys say she does. Like, they thought, hey, 6 months, she's going to go, whatever. I was like, no, this dog's got more life. So I took her, and the 6 months turned into about 5 years. But before I had the stroke, she wasn't doing great. She was like almost 15 years old. Many years of dealing with cancer, and it was starting to go downhill. I was telling people, like, hey, I don't think we have a lot of time left. So I spent 3 days in the hospital. Of course, I had my phone with me, so I called some friends, and I got some people to come over and let her out and feed her. But when I got home, I noticed that she was worse. And again, before anybody thinks that I'm saying it, the people that took care of her took good care of her. It's not abuse. I think the way I looked at it was that sudden change of me not coming home and her just being like laying there waiting for people to let her out. It just kind of made things worse. And she had been having a hard time walking. She pretty much gave up on one of her legs. She just could not walk when I got back. We had been dealing with a UTI. I was waiting for lab results back. I got it back a couple days later. We got some antibiotics. Came back 3 days after it was cleared up when we were done the antibiotics. So we had an antibiotic-resistant strain of UTI. She had some cuts that weren't healing, and they were starting to get infected. This is really, unfortunately, this is the reality of the end of a dog's life that has a terminal illness like this. So when I got back, I saw that. But I was struggling because after having a brain injury and I know enough about strokes to know that sometimes you don't come out the same person. And I was really afraid. I was questioning who I was. I was questioning my judgment. Am I seeing things the same way that I would have last week? And I live alone with my dog. So it was tough. There wasn't a lot of people to like bounce it off of and say like, are you seeing the same thing that I'm seeing? A little bit less than a month later, I made the call. She got to the point where she was starting to show that she was in pain, and I don't have a lot of tolerance for that. I don't have a lot of tolerance for letting an animal suffer. So we had to put her down. And as you could imagine, through these two things, there's some feelings. There's some emotions. I found it at some points in time, hard to regulate my emotions like I would have before. We can call it maybe there was some depression. And the thing is, I'm also very fortunate in the sense that I have good mental health care coverage. So I have access to go in to see somebody when you're going through this kind of thing. My issue is that I know that many people in this country don't have that. And it's really not okay. Through current events, through whatever is happening right now, there is a mental health issue in this country. And many people don't have access or can't afford to see a provider. And as a society, we should not accept this, because every time someone gets healthier, that is a net positive for society. People with untreated mental health care issues, a lot of things can come of that. Self-harm, substance abuse, violence. Or you could be like me and, eat a bunch of ice cream and sing along to your favorite emo songs. We should not accept any of this as a society, especially one of the most wealthy societies in in the world. We should not accept that. That's not okay. The thing that I forgot to mention earlier, we can mention that here right now. A lot of people, one of the arguments against a single payer healthcare system is that we don't want to pay for other people to get help if they're not paying into the system. And look, I get it. But the problem with that argument is that we already pay for it. And it actually works both ways. If you're ill, if you're sick, and you don't have insurance, then you don't go to the doctor because it's expensive. The problem with that is you don't always get better by yourself. Sometimes you get worse. And then that illness turns into an emergency. And then you go to an emergency room. And the emergency room can't turn you away because you don't have money. Then you get care. The care is more expensive at the emergency room than it would have been if you saw the doctor before. The problem is if you don't have money, you don't pay for it. And then that money gets disseminated to the rest of us through higher copays and higher premiums because somebody has to pay for it. So you're already paying for it. You're just paying more for it than if they got care in the first place. Now, if we talk about mental health care coverage, people that don't get that fixed, they don't contribute very well to society because they can't. You ever been depressed and tried to convince yourself to get out of bed and go do something productive? You know how hard that is? That's ridiculous. People need help. And then you have substance abuse. They turn to something like substance abuse, which is a form of self-harm. But what happens when you overdose? That's an emergency. What happens when you when it's just so bad that you have to get emergency treatment? That's an emergency. They're not going to turn you away, but then you don't have the money to pay for it. So the rest of us still pay for it. There's self-harm. There's suicide. These things are not okay. So we already pay for people to get that kind of coverage in an emergency fashion, which costs more than it does in a regular fashion. But if we had a single-payer healthcare system, then we wouldn't have to worry about that, because if you have the flu, you can go get flu medication, right? You can go do that right now. Or you could, if you have a any type of illness or ailment, you can go see somebody before it becomes an emergency, and then you can get back to being a productive member of society. If you have a mental health care crisis, you get that taken care of, then you can go back to being a productive member of society. All those things, getting any of that fixed represents a net positive for society. Now, I might not see it. If you go get fixed, it's not going to directly make my life better, but it makes us better as a whole. And that's the way we should be looking at society, is how do we make things better as a whole for everybody? Yeah. So it's something to think about, especially in a midterms year. There's a lot of things going on in the news, but what we should be looking at is who is really fighting for what is going to make life better for us. Is life going to be better for us if we go bomb other countries, or if we get healthcare? If we get healthcare that works and is not too expensive, or isn't going to make people go bankrupt. Because bankruptcy is also a net negative for society. If you have debts and you go bankrupt, then you don't pay debts. That debt still gets disseminated through society. That's just, yeah. So I kind of ran through this and didn't get through the jokes I was going to throw in there, but we'll see if I add them in a little bit. But yeah, just think about it. I don't care if you're voting for Republicans or Democrats or independents. In my opinion, there's probably 3 or 4 things that should be non-negotiable for somebody that wants to represent me and the government to care about. I think that the biggest bang for our buck out of all of them is a single-payer healthcare system. Take away the stress of, can I find a doctor? Am I going to be able to pay for the doctor? Am I going to the correct hospital? Take away the opportunity for getting sick to make you lose your job. It's pretty terrible that our healthcare is tied to having a job, which makes it hard to start a business, right? Because then you have to give up your healthcare to do it. Otherwise, you have to pay an exorbitant amount of money to buy it on the open market. Take away the fear of, if I switch jobs, there might be a month or 6-month period where my new healthcare doesn't go into effect. What if I get sick? What if you have a kid? Right? I don't have kids. Maybe you have kids. They get sick more than we do. So if I were to change jobs and not have healthcare for 6 months, well, they wouldn't either. And that could be a disaster for the children. That could be a disaster for you. There's a lot of variables that say why our system doesn't work. So I'm going to wrap this up. It's just, food for thought. If you're wondering, we're planning for me to make a full recovery. There's still a chance that I might have to get a stent in the artery if it doesn't heal properly. But for now, we're looking at a full recovery. I unfortunately don't know if I'm going to be able to play disc golf anymore, which is a big loss for me socially. Doesn't mean you shouldn't try it out, because disc golf is fantastic. And one day I'll find another pit bull that I can't live without, and maybe I'll make a video about them. It's not today, but it'll happen. Anyway, next time we'll talk about some current events. But thanks for watching.